I want to thank SBIA for having me here today. And for those of you who know me in real life, I normally have a huge booming voice, but I'm currently fighting my nemesis, grass pollen, and it's winning. So hopefully my voice will last throughout the entire talk without too many issues. Again, my name is Ranjani. I'm here representing the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality, Office of Policy for Pharmaceutical Quality, where I am a policy lead, and I'll be discussing the Advanced Manufacturing Technologies, or AMT for short, designation program. Oh, just hitting the wrong button. Sorry about that. So very quickly, I just want to go over our learning objectives for today. The first one is to just give a high-level definition of what we mean when we talk about pharmaceutical quality. We'd like to introduce the Advanced Manufacturing Technologies Designation Program and summarize feedback from the Innovative Manufacturing Public Workshop that was held in June of last year. I'll talk about this a little bit more. And I would like to provide an overview of the guidance that was published. The draft guidance was published in December of last year for the AMT designation program. And as part of this is the majority of my talk. I'm going to describe the background of the guidance, how we got here, why we have this guidance. I'd like to spend some time talking about the program processes and benefits as they're described in the guidance, and also do a little bit of comparing and contrasting with a few related FDA programs. So what is pharmaceutical quality? So a quality product of any kind is one that essentially meets the expectations of the user. When you turn your computer on, you don't want it to glitch. When you go out to your car in the morning to go to work, you want it to start. When you want to make a phone call, you want your phone to work. So you want those items to meet the expectations of you, the user. And drugs should really be no different. So what it is this idea that everyone deserves confidence in the next dose of their medicine. So pharmaceutical quality assures the availability, safety, and efficacy of every dose of medication. So if you took a pill this morning, the pill you take this evening should be as high quality as that pill you took this morning. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit now and talk about advanced manufacturing, more like a high-level discussion of what advanced manufacturing is. So when we talk about advanced manufacturing, or I know this is innovative manufacturing, it's all related. It's new manufacturing technologies that can include things like integrating novel approaches, or using established techniques in an innovative way. So this was something that Dr. Burrow brought up, that it doesn't always have to be new. It can be something that you're just using in a different way. And important, it can be technologies that are applied in a new domain where there aren't necessarily defined best practices and experience. So you're learning as you go to some extent. And I also want to point out that in every field, there are different production techniques that are considered advanced. So we're in here today for the CEDAR track. It could be that something that is really novel and really innovative in the field of, say, small molecules may not necessarily be all that innovative for, say, large molecule drugs or biologics. Maybe it's something they've been doing a long time. The same could be said for medical devices. So in every field, it can be a little bit different. So one of the things we talk about with innovation is it's scary, it's expensive. You don't know if it's going to work. You don't know if it's going to slow down the approval of your product. So why do we want to even consider advanced manufacturing? And most importantly, I am from the Office of Pharmaceutical Quality. It's the production of high and higher quality drugs is a key reason. And related to that, the prevention of drug shortages due to quality-related manufacturing issues. This is still the number one reason for drug shortages that we've had in the recent past, that we have today, that we're probably going to have in the future. Faster drug development, especially when we're talking about rare diseases or unmet medical needs. advanced manufacturing can help bring these drugs to market faster. And it can also strengthen domestic drug manufacturing. And one of the reasons we care about all of those things is advanced manufacturing can provide greater agility and flexibility, for example, during a public health emergency. And I need not point out that we've recently gone through this, and it's really, we don't know when this is going to happen again. So advanced manufacturing can help us as we go into these sorts of situations. So that was advanced manufacturing, broadly speaking. Now I'm going to specifically talk about the Advanced Manufacturing Technologies Designation Program. So this is a specific program, and it all started in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023, which was a large omnibus spending bill. It was signed into law on December 29th of 2022. And this is a huge bill. It's thousands of pages long. It is full of all kinds of foreign and domestic policy initiatives. I couldn't even begin to tell you about all of them, but there are in there several quality-related provisions. And they fall mainly into two parts of the bill, the first one being the Prevent Pandemics Act, or Title II. And here, I'm not going to list these all off, but you can see that there's a couple of different programs there. And then the second one is the Food and Drug Omnibus Reform Act of 2022, or FDORA. We joke it is like the hat, also called Title III. And in here, Section 3213 is where we find the Advanced Manufacturing Technologies Designation Program. So what is an advanced manufacturing technology? And there's probably a couple of different ways to define it. The way we're defining it here is actually taken from the statute, taken from FDORA. And the last thing anybody wants on a Thursday or any other afternoon is to have someone stand up here and read statutory language to them. So I do have the statutory language here. I'm not going to read it to you. Instead, I want to just point out, highlighted in red, some of the important concepts. And the first one is that an AMT is a method of manufacturing or a combination of manufacturing methods. And this combination of methods, or this method, should include a novel technology or an established technology used in a novel way. So that's very important. It's novel, or it's being used in a novel way. It's a method of manufacturing, but that's not enough. Novelty is not enough. It also has to substantially improve the manufacturing process for that drug while maintaining equivalent or better superior drug quality. And this is also explained in the statute as substantially improving something. The manufacturing of a drug involves reducing development time for that drug that's using that method, or increasing or maintaining the supply of that drug. And in this case, it's specifically a life-supporting, life-sustaining, or another drug of critical importance to health. And as we pointed out, drug shortages, it can also be of a drug that is on the drug shortage list. So the statute also goes on to describe the program, what the program is all about. We know what an AMT is now. What is the AMT designation program? So 1 year after enactment of FDORA, we, FDA, had to initiate this program to request designation. And this is designation as an AMT. And as part of that, we need to have a process for designation. So what is it to have a designation or to get a designation? And of course, we need a way to evaluate the requests that we get and make decisions about what will be a designated AMT. And so as part of that, there obviously has to be some sort of submission to the agency. And here, the statute talks about the need for data and information that essentially demonstrates that that method of manufacturing or proposed AMT meets the criteria in the statute. And I'll talk more about the criteria, and also that it's in a particular context of use. So I'm going to stop and do a quick challenge question. Which of the following does not describe an AMT? Is it A, limited to one method of manufacturing per AMT, can use an established technique or technology in a novel way, that substantially improves the manufacturing process for a drug, or that it can provide either equivalent or superior drug quality? And the answer is A, it's not necessarily limited to one method. It could be a combination of methods, either novel or established, but that are put together in a novel way. So I mentioned this workshop, and I want to talk a little bit about this workshop. This took place on June 8th of 2023. I don't know if anybody here was there, but it was called Advancing the Utilization and Supporting the Implementation and Innovative Manufacturing Approaches. And it was hosted by the Duke Margolis Center for Health Policy. And the reason we had this workshop, we do a lot of things because the statute tells us we have to do it, but that's not the only reason we do it. The point of this meeting essentially was it fulfilled FDORA and PDUFA 7 commitments. And so we put them all together into this one meeting on innovative manufacturing. And it was a really cool meeting. It was a full day. There were a variety of FDA officials there, pharmaceutical industry representatives, and also several people from academia. And what the discussion focused on was the current state of innovative manufacturing technologies and incentives for their widespread adoption. Because again, these sorts of innovative advanced technologies have a lot that they can bring to manufacturing, but there needs to be a way to incentivize companies to use them. So throughout the meeting, there were a series of panels led by FDA colleagues of mine, and the very last one of the day was about AMTs. So I just want to go through some of the key takeaways. And in this panel, FDA, we were really there in a listening capacity. This was before we had started drafting the draft guidance, and we wanted to know what was important to industry and to academia. Like, what did people want out of this guidance? And what we heard was that there was support for the general approach, and people felt like, yes, this program could encourage greater adoption of AMTs. And another thing that we heard, and something that makes this program a little bit unique, is there was a lot of support for the idea that the AMT designation program is not intended only for applicants and sponsors. It can be anybody who has something that meets the eligibility criteria and can give us the data and information to support it. You can participate in this program. And again, we also wanted to get a lot of feedback about what people wanted in the guidance. And there was an expression that we needed a balance between flexibility and certainty, which makes sense because we want to have some regulatory certainty. But on the other hand, we're talking about new, novel things. There needs to be some flexibility. We don't know what we don't know. We can't see what we haven't seen yet. So there also has to be some flexibility there. And again, clarity on the benefits of participating in the program, because again, new things are scary and they're expensive, and there has to be some benefit to getting people on board with this program. And there was also a feeling that it was important that we define key elements from the statute. So some examples being data and information. What is that data? What's that information? What do you mean by context of use? This is a term that we hear a lot, and it can mean slightly different things in, well, different contexts. So we did that in June, and then the statute required that we then had to go on to develop a guidance. So why were we developing this guidance? Of course, I'm going to point back to the statute. In a way, we had to. FDORA said that not later than 180 days after the public meeting, so that's that June 8th meeting that I just talked about, we would have to issue draft guidance regarding the goals and implementation of the AMT designation program. And this is still in process, but not later than 2 years after the date of enactment would be the final guidance, issuance of the final guidance for implementation. So what does this guidance cover? And I've talked about guidances here and there in the past. And what I really like to do is not just read what's in the guidance, but actually try to interpret it and make it useful for the people who are listening. So the guidance, and again, this is out of Fedora, out of the statute. It has to cover content. That's in the law. We have to describe the content of the program. And that includes the process. We talked about the process by which a person may request a designation. So if you have this technology and you think it could be a good candidate for the program, there has to be a process by which somebody can request that designation. And if there's a process by which you can request designation, then you really need to know the data and information that you have to submit to support that request. And once the designation has been made, ultimately the goal is to get these AMTs into applications so that they can actually help expedite drug development. In that, when we get to that step, well, we need a process where to figure out, well, how are we actually expediting the development and the review of these applications? And of course, most importantly, the criteria for eligibility, because that is really going to describe everything else that's here. So why do we need a guidance? Well, obviously, we have to have a guidance because the law says we do, but more than that, it's to communicate FDA's current thinking on advanced manufacturing technologies and fill in the blanks, as I like to say of the statute. So the statute gives us a framework of what we need to do and what we need to provide, but there's a lot of open-ended questions there. And again, what is the designation process? We know we need a process, but what is it? What should be submitted in that designation request? How does the AMT, once designated, affect application assessment? Because ultimately, again, that's the goal. And the guidance also explains other important details of the program. So I'm going to go through just 3 of these elements. There's a lot more in the draft guidance. I do have a link to it at the end of the talk, but I want to talk about these 3 main key elements that that I think are really an important part of the program. So the process would start off with what we call a requester, developing a proposed AMT. And this can be a CDMO, this can be an applicant, it can be a sponsor, it can be a Joe Schmo, somebody from a tech development company. It could be anybody. And this is something that's really cool and different about this program. So they have a technology, it meets the eligibility criteria, they want to submit it to the FDA. So they would submit that designation request. And again, it would be independent of an application. It would just be a standalone request that could be submitted by anybody. So then FDA gets the designation. So now what? If, and this won't necessarily be for everything that comes in the door, but if there is a proposed AMT and FDA looks at it and says, wow, we really have something here. This could really be a good fit for the program. What would happen then is the assignment of what's called a designated lead. And this is a great benefit. That is your go-to person. They will facilitate interactions with AMT holders. So these are holders of AMTs that have been designated, and also with applicants who might want to use that AMT. And there are a number of things that you would get from the designated lead: early interaction with requesters, and then after designation, interaction with not only requesters, but applicants as well. And again, the ultimate goal is to get that AMT into an application or multiple applications. And then the designated lead would continue to be a part of that process to prioritize application assessment so that they could have these applications that use AMTs to increase the efficiency of that assessment. So one of the other key elements I talked about was content. So what goes in the request? Supporting data and information taken out of the statute, but what does that mean? Well, we need a description of the AMT at a minimum. So if you have a proposed AMT, what is it? Tell us what it is. Very important, how does that AMT meet the statutory eligibility criteria? So the data and information in the request really should include information that shows us that the eligibility criteria are met, because that's very key for this program. And again, it should be specific to a particular context of use. Again, a term taken out of the statute, for example, a particular class of drugs. And this is a little bit different than some of the other novel technology programs that are out there. And I'm going to talk about those a little bit more at the end. And that is that you need to actually have some data, some development data about the AMT. So you can show us that it works. You can demonstrate that this actually does what it's supposed to do. And that should include batch analysis data generated using either a product under development, if you were an applicant or a sponsor and you had a product that you were already working on. But if you're a CDMO or you're a researcher, or even if you are an applicant or a sponsor, it could also be with data, batch analysis data from a model drug. And this would be a representative drug, like something that is similar to your context of use, for example, a particular class of drugs. So the other big thing we talked about was benefits. I feel like I keep saying it, but innovation is scary. It's money, it's risk. Part of what this program aims to do is de-risk innovation a little bit. And so it's really important that there be benefits to participating in the program and that we communicate those benefits. And this is part of what we try to do in the guidance. So the guidance describes early FDA interaction first with requesters. So these are the people who have a really good idea. They submit a proposed AMT. We think that that could be a good candidate. And there would then be communication with the FDA about that technology. Again, the assignment of a designated lead. So it would be a primary subject matter expert for that request, but they would also continue to work on that particular AMT and coordinate FDA discussions both at the AMT level and at the application level and facilitate communication as needed. And it doesn't just end with the requesters, because of course we ultimately want these AMTs in applications. So it would also be prioritize interaction with applicants. And the way we describe this is higher priority for applications that use a designated AMT. So for example, if you have two applications that are part of some priority program or expedited program, one has an AMT and one doesn't, it would be to prioritize the ones that do have AMTs in them. And it can be that you are using it, you are referencing it, or you're relying upon it. And again, the designated lead would facilitate quality assessment of those applications to increase efficiency of the assessment process. So I want to talk a little bit now about another topic that is in the guidance, and those are differences between the AMT designation program and other FDA programs related to novel technologies. And specifically here, I'm going to talk about CDER's Emerging Technologies Program, or ETP, and we talk about the Emerging Technologies Team, or ETT, those are really the same thing, and the CBER Advanced Technologies Team, or CAT. So these look very, very similar. Both programs deal with technologies where there is limited or no previous FDA assessment or inspectional experience. The difference being that with AMT, it's really focused on the context of use. Maybe FDA has experience with a particular technology, but not for that context of use, not being used in the way it's proposed to be used as an AMT. AMT is also much more focused. It's limited to methods of manufacturing that are novel or used in a novel way. ETT and CAT, on the other hand, it's intended also for other novel elements, not only manufacturing processes. So manufacturing might be a part of it, but it's not all of it. And then there's this question of data. We talked about the content of a request and that AMT requires certain data and information to support the request. And so for AMT, you would need data generated for a particular context of use, for example, data from a model drug, whereas ETT-CAT are earlier in the process. And so there might not be any data generated yet for those programs. And if you had a really good novel technology and you wanted FDA to help you get it off the ground, we would actually very much encourage you to first engage with ETT or CAT and then go to AMT. They aren't really two programs that you do at the same time. And again, because ETT and CAT are early in the process, you might not necessarily have data yet. It could still be theoretical, which it couldn't be for AMT. And the next difference I want to point out is applicants would communicate with the agency for both of these programs and have increased and more frequent interactions. But with ETT-CAT, that interaction, that communication with the agency would really happen prior to submission of an application. And submission of an application is really a big part of that. It's a little bit different in AMT, where applicants who are using, referencing, or relying on the designated AMT in their application, that's when you would start talking to FDA. And then the last way in which they're slightly different from each other has to do with who exactly we're talking to, who FDA is interacting with. So for AMT, it's not only applicants and sponsors, but it could also be technology developers, and those developers are not necessarily applicants and sponsors. And ETT and CAT are, again, it's a little bit more broad. It's interactions with multiple public and private stakeholders. And there's also other aspects to the program that are not a part of AMT, for example, training, education, and grants. That's specific to ETT and CAT. So I have another quick challenge question. Which of the following is generally not included in an AMT designation request? A description of the proposed AMT, option A. B, data and information demonstrating eligibility for a particular context of use. C, process validation data for a specific product. Or D, batch analysis data generated using either a product under development or a model drug. And it would be C, because we would not expect at the level of AMT designation that you would already have process development data or commercial scale data for a specific product. I mean, if you did, great, but we wouldn't necessarily expect that this would be the case at this level. So I also have a list of resources. It's not quite as long as Dr. Burrow's list, but at the top of it, a document near and dear to my heart is a link to the draft guidance for industry on the Advanced Manufacturing Technologies Designation Program. And if you are interested in reading it, the next link is to the Federal Register notice, which tells you a little bit about the guidance. The information I presented at the very beginning about advanced manufacturing in general, that is largely taken from this third resource, which is FDA's website about it's about advanced manufacturing for public health emergency preparedness and response. And the next one is another really great FDA website, news, events, and funding opportunities related to advanced manufacturing. They're always updating this site. There's always, cool new stuff on there. And I also provided a link to my office, so FDA CDER's Office of Pharmaceutical Qualities. And the public docket for public comments to this particular guidance is closed. It was open for 60 days, but it closed back in March. However, if you have any questions, you can always submit them to CDER OPQ inquiries. If you have some questions about a particular technology that you aren't sure if it's ready, maybe it's not, and you want to ask some general questions, this is really the best place to send those questions. And I can promise you it doesn't go into a black hole. If it has to do with AMTs, it's going to come to me. So I will see your question, and I will do my best to answer it to the best of my ability. So in summary, the draft guidance provides information about the AMT designation program, including recommendations on how and when to submit an AMT designation request, what the request evaluation process is for AMT designation requests, the benefits of AMT designation, and some of the differences between AMT designation and similar FDA programs. And I always end with this kind of cute idea that innovation is the active ingredient in regulating pharmaceutical quality. And I can probably take a few questions now or wait till the end, whatever anybody wants to do.
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. Looks like we have a question in the room.
Thank you for your presentation. Very good. I like it.
Thank you.
OPQ here. Actually, I have a couple of questions. Actually, are you going to make this a pre-competitive actions, meaning that, will you require the participants to actually open their technologies to everyone, or is it an intellectual property aspects taken?
So I can't necessarily speak to exactly how that part of the implementation piece is going to work, but I can say we did get a lot of public comments asking about that, because people want to know what's out there, but they also need their proprietary information protected. So that is something that we are taking into consideration as we develop the final guidance and as we work out the implementation. But as of right now, we're still reviewing and considering all those comments.
I see. And the other question I have is, and quickly, is this all related actually to the other mandates related to the Center of Excellence for continuous manufacturing? Is there a connection here?
So the only information I have about that is a little bit old, because I presented on the program back in November before publication of the guidance. And at the time, the funding wasn't available for the Centers of Excellence. And unfortunately, I don't know too much more about it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm by no means a CMC person, but it was great, useful information to take back to my organization. But a curiosity question. So as a sponsor who's in a phase 2 development, you're continuously improving your own process and coming up with novel, right? So if we apply for this, how do you envision then bringing it back into development to progress towards the application phase, marketing?
So I will say, everything is really going to be on a case-by-case basis, because we're very early in the program. Though sponsors who are planning to submit an IND, you can include AMTs in there. Clinical data probably wouldn't necessarily be appropriate for AMT designation to submit to the agency. So it would really depend on what the technology was and what the data you have is. And again, if there's a specific question, you can always reach out. I will also, again, mirror what Dr. Burrow said, which is, talking to the review division for a specific application is definitely a good place to start.
Okay, so the guidance gives us information for qualification for this AMT, and then if we have further question, we can just email to clarify whether or not we could qualify for a designation request.
Right. So if you have general questions about whether or not something might qualify or what you need to submit, those sorts of questions are better sent to the inquiries mailbox. And this is for CJUR. The program is also for CBER regulated products, and I would have to find out where those inquiries would be sent. But once a request is all put together, so you have the data and information and it supports the eligibility criteria, that is what you would submit to the agency as an AMT designation request. And that process is in the guidance, like where to send it and everything else.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll take an online question.
Is the program applicable to devices or drug-device combination products?
So that is a good question. And no, the technologies that would be applicable for the AMT designation program, it really focuses on drugs, biologics, and API and manufacturing technologies. So drug delivery devices or device components wouldn't be necessarily appropriate for this particular program.
Thanks. Another online question.
In the AMT guidance, it says the content should be available to FDA, the designation owner, and sponsor who references it, even if it's included in a DMF. How do you protect the confidential information then?
So this is actually, I think, similar to the question we received earlier. We did get a lot of questions about confidentiality, but also sharing of the information. I know under GDUFA, there is a similar, for DMFs, there is a way to share that information. We are taking those comments into consideration while we develop the final guidance, but I don't have anything specific yet.
Does anybody else have a question in the room? Okay, we'll continue with our online questions.
Once a designation is granted, how could multiple product applications utilize an existing advanced manufacturing designation?
So that's a good question. And there's a couple of different ways. I mean, an applicant with several different applications for similar drugs or a similar context of use could use that same AMT in multiple applications. In the case where the AMT holder and the applicant are two different entities, it would be by a right of reference. And as long as that AMT is appropriate for that particular context of use, there is a right of reference, or the AMT holder and the applicant are the same entity, it could be used in multiple applications. Though each application, this is also spelled out in the guidance, and in each application, you would then, at that point, need to obviously have all your CMC data for your particular product that is the subject of that application. You wouldn't take your model data and stick it in your application. So it could be leveraged across multiple applications, either from the same applicant or between different applicants with a right of reference.
Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I think I heard you say that during this AMT process, there's no need for validation. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that was the challenge question. So process validation, that is data that you would be expected to have later in the development process.
So that is the confusion I have.
Mhm.
If you're down the road, you have now entered, you have been designated with this this manufacturing technology.
Mhm.
You're way down into the road. We are trying to validate and everything falls apart. What happens then?
Right. So that's a really good question, and that points to the difference between an AMT designation and application approval, because it's two different things. And so I guess there's pros and cons to everything. So the data that would be in the request to support the AMT designation, that would be where you have your batch analysis data for a model drug, and you don't necessarily need to have that level of data that shows, you can produce at commercial scale. However, if you're then talking about further down the line in an application, that's different then. You could use that AMT, but in the event that you're trying to use it, it's the same context of use. I mean, if at that point things start to go wrong, things are falling apart, this is where your designated lead is going to be able to help you and facilitate conversations within the review division to see what's going on. And I mean, it's hard to speculate on how that would go because we haven't gotten there yet. But yes, when we talk about the application, all of the content and requirements of the application are still there. But what we're asking for AMT designation is going to be a little bit different. So you would still need to have PV data down the road. You just don't, for your application, you just wouldn't necessarily need that level of data for AMT designation.
Okay, that's all the time we have for questions. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for those great Q&As.
And I didn't lose my voice.